Look, when it comes to a car, it's all about big. Big on responsiveness, efficiency, and huge fun to drive.
Yeah, but a car needs to be small. An agile and sporty city car that's beautifully designed.
Ah, but a car must be big on features. The latest entertainment system, alloy wheels, rear parking sensors.
But it needs to be small in price. 0% APR representative, a £500 deposit from Mazda, and no minimum customer deposit.
It's got to be the Mazda 2.
Exactly.
So, the big question is...
The small matter of when to book a test drive.
For more information, search Mazda 2 or visit your local Mazda dealer. Mazda personal contract purchase. T's and C's apply. Finance subject to status. 18s or over. Guarantee may be required. Mazda Financial Services. Excludes Sport Black.
Blog Talk Radio. This is NLPI Radio. This is the Friday Night Paranormal Show with Mickey Gokul.
Oh yes, indeed it is the Friday Night Paranormal Show with me, Mickey Gokul, and tonight I've got some wonderful people just absolutely dying to contribute to tonight's show, and we've got Sherry. Sherry's here, she's live and direct. I want to bring her on straight away because she's got just loads to say and loads to talk about. So good morning.
Good morning. Where have you been living today? Good morning.
It's been a long day. Good evening, Sherry. How are you?
Good evening. I'm all right. How are you?
I'm really good. I've had a fantastic week, a really busy week. I mean, last week we were talking about ancient aliens and technology with the Reverend John Polk, and I've got some really good news for you guys tonight because he's here. He's live in the studio, and he's going to talk to us about some interesting facts. Okay, so I can't wait to bring him online into the studio and to hear what he's got to say because he's an expert. He's a ufologist, and he knows what he's talking about. And tonight's show is all about UFOs, but specifically UFOs in the UK. UK UFOs. Now, have you seen a UFO in the UK?
I haven't. To be honest, it's not really, as far as I'm aware, because I don't really have that much knowledge of UFOs. I'm really interested in them, but I don't know that much. So to me, as somebody who's ignorant to this kind of thing, I wasn't even really aware that UFOs in the UK was a particularly big thing. So my mind's going to get blown huge again tonight, like it was blown last week as well. So I'm looking forward to it.
It's huge. I mean, when I say huge, I'll bring out some facts and figures, and we can have a look at those and have a little listen to what the reports are and where the reports have come from. But there are hotspots in the UK for UFO sightings, and I can tell you what they are now. You'll be interested to know that how can I put it? Whereabouts in the UK do you live normally, Sherry?
Where do I live normally, did you say?
Yeah.
Normally, what, as opposed to other days, or?
No, just where you normally reside, because I know you moved recently.
Oh, yeah. I grew up in a town called Hinckley, which is in Leicestershire, but just under 2 years ago, I moved to Coventry, and I live smack bang in the centre of Coventry city centre, whereas where I grew up was a little bit more sort of a country sort of based town. So
well, believe it or not,
here.
That where you live is one of the areas that has reported quite a few UFO sightings.
Well, it's funny that you say that. I know I said a minute ago, I'm not really aware of UFOs in the UK. I'm aware of individual stories, but I didn't know that it was like a big thing. I kind of thought I hear things here or there, but I never really thought it's a culture here, whereas in America, obviously, UFOs is a huge thing. A colleague of mine lives not far away from where I live, and she sees things all the time. So I'm not surprised that Coventry is on the list, if I'm being honest.
And normally people would usually say, well, we see these kind of things around military installations. Now, we're going to talk to the Reverend John Polk a bit later on about the Rendlesham Forest incident. Now, if you're not aware of the Rendlesham Forest incident, then where have you been? Because that is equivalent to, how can I put it, Roswell. If you don't know about Roswell, go and look it up. Roswell in New Mexico in the USA. I mean, that was huge. I think it was 1947, I think. Don't quote me on that one. But ever since then, there have been reports of UFO sightings all across the UK. We've got an interview with a lady from Staffordshire who in 1954 actually had a close encounter with a UFO. And so we've got that interview coming up. We've also got a map, which I posted on the page, which kind of, it's the top 10 of UFO towns for sightings. Now, Falkirk is the top number one UFO hotspot in the UK, with 1 in 5 people seeing UFOs.
To be honest, I'm not surprised, because I think I looked at the map and a lot of sightings happen in Scotland, and that doesn't surprise me at all, because they're higher up. There's not an awful lot going on any further north of us than Scotland, particularly. The air is clearer, the sky is clearer, there's less light pollution up there, so you're more likely to be able to actually see things. So I'm not surprised by that at all.
Number 2 on the list is Bexley in Kent. Which is, if you're not sure of the UK geography, Falkirk being 800 miles away in Scotland, and then you've got this tiny little town, which is just kind of southeast of London, which is the second highest UFO sighting place in the UK. Then we got number 3, which is Wigan. Number 4, which is Liverpool. Number 5, Tunbridge, again in Kent. Number 6, Aberdeen. Number 7, Torquay. Number 8 is, I can't even pronounce that, Galashiels. Oh, God, I never even heard of it.
Galashiels, I think it is.
Galashiels,
in Scotland, right?
In Scotland.
Yeah.
And then we've got Wolverhampton at number 9, and at 10, Middlesbrough. So what do they have all in common? I mean, why, if UFOs exist, of course, why are they being sighted in these locations? Well, as you said, less light pollution. I think also the fact that a place like Falkirk, it is higher up. The outer, it's a mountain range, not much kind of town civilization going on there. So it is a sort of place where if you saw something in the sky, it would seem unusual. If it wasn't an aircraft, you would have a second look. But in London, for example, where there's so much light pollution and everybody's on their iPhone or on their phones, they don't really have the opportunity to look up. How many people look up? Do you look up when you're walking along a road late at night or driving in a car? Do you look up? No. And I think there's, I don't know, some of these places like Aberdeen, it's a big town.
I wonder with London as well. Obviously, you've got a lot of skyscrapers and tall buildings which block out. So even if you are looking at the sky while you're in London, a lot of the time, are you going to see anything? Because you've got buildings always and bridges and things in the way all the time, and there could be things going on, but people just can't see it.
There's a strong possibility, but then again, my argument is, if somebody sat in Ivory Tower on the 457th floor, isn't that going to give you the best window of opportunity?
But at night time, obviously not all UFOs are happening at night time, but a lot of stories do happen at night. Who's going to be sitting in the office at 1 o'clock in the morning?
Well, you got a lot of residential homes as well that like the Barbican, for instance. Lots of places on the embankment that are now residential. There's I don't know. I guess people don't look into the skies like they did in times of old. My dear Sherry, I guess people are kind of complacent to the fact that we do have air traffic, and they don't really care whether something is unusual or not, because they just assume it's a helicopter because there's so many of them, or they just assume. I mean, like 2:30 this morning, I could hear the distinct sound of a Chinook helicopter. Now, the Chinook is the one which is like a bus with two rotor blades, one at the front, one at the back, and it's used for army purposes, usually for transporting troops or light goods, cars, things like that. And we get a lot of that traffic over where I am in Hertfordshire. And the thing is, it was 2:30 in the morning, and it was very, very low because I could hear it, and it woke me up. So, when something like that happens, I want to peek my head out the window. But with UFOs, it's often reported that they're silent. You can't hear them. So you're not going to be tempted to look out the window and have a peep at what it is, because you just can't hear it. So you're just relying on the fact that it's a visual thing. But who are these people that are witnessing UFOs? There are a lot of cases that have been reported by police officers, believe it or not.
Well, yeah, they're the ones that are the most vigilant, so it makes sense.
And they're the ones on night duty normally.
Oh, yeah.
But saying, London being the place that it is, very busy, everybody's going about their lives and so on and so on. But there was a recent, I think, how long ago was this? This is February of this year, where a UFO was caught on camera flying over the skies above London by stunned policemen.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I do know about this one.
I posted the pictures up on the page. Two brothers were left stunned after separately spotting what they believe was a UFO in the early hours of the morning. Both of them were on the way to work. Simon and his brother Jonathan are both police officers and were commuting to their jobs in the early hours of the morning when they sighted the object. It appears they both saw the UFO within minutes of each other. Now, Simon says, I was walking to the bus stop on my way to work when I saw an object the size of a football field. I have no idea what that is, but some strange noise coming through. He saw an object which is the size of a football field, he claims. He also said he saw 3 bright orange lights hanging in the sky. Now, he waited in a stationary position for about 6 to 8 minutes it waited in a stationary position, and then it moved west above his head. Now, he's taken photographs, and he's posted those photographs, which appeared in the Mirror and several other magazines. Sorry, I don't know, we just had an advert for some reason. So this is a police officer, and not only that, but his brother substantiates the story by also saying that he witnessed this event as well. Mass hysteria? I don't know. Misunderstanding? I don't know. But they are serving police officers. And in my opinion, serving police officers usually make the most credible witnesses. Usually, I say, because they're just human after all. But there's so many stories. I mean, the Rendlesham Forest incident back in the 80s. Now, we're going to talk about that in 7-8 minutes' time or so. And we're going to welcome the Reverend John Polk. But before we do that, an old friend of ours is here and he's listening intently in the wings, and he can't wait to join us. His name is Paul Rook. So I want you to just welcome Paul to the show, ladies and gents. Here he is. Hello, Sir Paul Rook.
Hello. How are you?
Hello, sir. I'm really good. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad at all.
Paul, let's get straight into this one, sir. What do you think is going on? I mean, America is absolutely saturated with reports of UFO sightings, and, we all know the story about America. But what do you believe is going on in the UK? Is it the same thing happening in the UK as in America? Are the government covering up, or are people just deluded?
See, I'm a very logical person. And for me, I can see two sides of the argument. that, if UFOs exist and there are aliens, why are they travelling all the way to Earth to conduct experiments on people and giving anal probes and things like that? I mean, surely there'd be lots of other things to do.
But would they not be
other...
frightened, Paul? Because if they're up there and they're watching us and they've got advanced technology to us and they've been watching us for years and they've seen what we've done to each other over the years, I'm not sure if I would want to come and make direct contact with us. I'd be interested in taking the odd person and checking them out and trying to figure out what makes us tick and trying to stay away a bit.
I mean, if they've been watching us for ages and they've thought, do you know what, they're really not worth it, let's just go and find some planet with intelligent life, and off they go. Why don't just leave us alone?
Because maybe they're trying to figure out what we are and who we are and how we work, and it could be any reason.
Yeah, I mean, we're just throwing ideas about and stuff. I mean, there even is a theory
I think it's bank holiday. I just think they're small families going out in the family car and having a look and being told, listen, don't go there. Whatever you do, don't go there. And they just come along and have a look like we do when we go to the zoo.
Absolutely. And, there's suggestions out there that we are an experiment of theirs.
Keeping an eye on us. As
I was saying to Steve on Wednesday.
If we take that theory, then why would a small town in Scotland called Falkirk be UFO capital of Britain? 1 in 5 people in Falkirk have reported seeing a UFO. There's what they call the Falkirk Triangle, which is between Edinburgh and Glasgow, where unexplained objects are constantly being seen. There's 300 reports a year. There was a case down in, I think it was Wales somewhere, in 1977. I remember looking at it earlier on today, where a group of school children witnessed what they described was a UFO trying to take off. And there was like 15 of them, I think it's between 7 and 15 of the children, went into the school and said, we've just seen like a spaceship, basically, for want of a better word. And the teacher sat them down at different desks. They described it as exam conditions and asked them to draw what they see. Now, each of them drew a traditional saucer-shaped UFO. But earlier on in the program that I was watching, it was on YouTube, they said that what they witnessed was a cylindrical object taken off, but yet later in the program they showed the drawings and it was all the UFO shape. So I'm wondering whether or not it was a case of 1 or 2 people see something, and because it's unusual, they've been telling their mates, so they've all had a go. Do you know what I mean? It's false memory syndrome as well, I think it's called, where the brain sort of fills in gaps. So I'm not too convinced of that one. In 1990, two hikers in the Scottish Highlands were startled when a huge diamond-shaped object appeared in the air, where it hovered for 10 minutes before shooting up into the sky. Now, whilst most UFO sightings lack convincing photo evidence, these two managed to actually take pictures of the craft. A series of 6-colour photos showed a 25-metre metallic craft with an RAF jet in pursuit of this object, and the pictures were said to be the best ever evidence of UFO activity. Now, of course, the pictures end up in government hands and officials, but the old legend Nick Pope, an ex-MOD employee who's charged with logging UFO sightings around the UK, said that a blown-up image was removed suspiciously from his office. I mean, the image disappeared. He said it was the best UFO photo we'd ever received. Intelligence personnel came to the conclusion that these photographs are real, it's a solid craft, and no one has the faintest idea what it is. He also claims that it was part of an internal cover-up and he was told by officials that there was no record of the original photos when he pressed them. When he pressed them for it, like, where are the originals? Oh, there are no originals. I mean, that's a cover-up.
I mean, to me, that I'm going to say that for me personally, there's two solutions jumping up. Either there are aliens and their government and all the governments around the world know about them, or it is something to do with the government and it's their aircraft. And again, they're trying to cover it up. So either way, it's just one big cover-up after another.
That story about the Scottish Highlands is really interesting to me, because it sounds very similar to something that my dad saw when he was in the Navy. And I've spoken about my dad before to you guys. He doesn't believe in ghosts or anything like that. He's open to the idea of UFOs, but it was the late 80s when he was in the Navy, and they were literally in the middle of the ocean. There was no land for miles and miles, and him and his first mate were up in the bird's nest on watch, just the two of them in the middle of the night, and they both sat there and watched this object floating in the sky above them for a good 10 minutes, and he said to me that it's almost as if it saw them, realised that they've been spotted, and zoomed across the sky and disappeared. But there was no log of anything being, like, there was no radar that came up for anything having been within the area. There was no contact made with anybody over radio or anything like that. They both saw it and they both turned to each other and said, "Did you just see that? What was that?" And they spent the rest of the shift trying to figure out what it was. And there was literally no land for miles and miles and miles, and no other ships for miles and miles and miles. And he said that when it zoomed across the sky, that was faster than anything that is man-made could possibly move, because it was gone. You can see for miles and miles at sea, and it was literally gone in a second. And it was gone forever.
That's what everyone's reporting now. Let's just make the assumption for a moment that we all know that there's the possibility that the Americans and the British government are, they have access to aircraft that is beyond our comprehension at the moment. We don't know that yet. We know they're working on projects, but we don't know yet. So let's just pull that out of the equation and just accept the fact that these people are seeing what they class as objects that are being unidentified, UFOs, unidentified flying objects. Now, that's an interesting story by somebody we also heard earlier on by the story by two police officers. Well, there's another story that's emerged from a pilot. He was the pilot in command of a jumbo jet and was left fearing for his life after a near miss with a UFO in July of 2013. Now, his aircraft was flying over Berkshire at 34,000 feet when that's the almost maximum ceiling height for a jumbo, by the way. The cabin crew spotted a strange object hurtling towards the port side of the aircraft. In the last moment, the bright silver rugby ball-shaped craft vanished into thin air as quickly as it appeared. Now, the pilot, who was panicking at the time, radioed air traffic control, but radar came up a blank, as did military scanners when an official report into the sighting was launched. Now, investigation concluded that it was not possible to trace the object or determine the likely cause of the sighting. But yet, here we go. We have cabin crew, we have passengers, and we have a very experienced pilot who have all seen something that they cannot explain. When you get pilots, they have normally got, they have to look out at air traffic because you have air traffic at various altitude, 100 feet below you, 2,000 feet below you, left and right of you. And they've also got instruments in their cockpit which determine the proximity of other aircraft as well. And it's interesting that visually they're able to say, well, I can't identify what that was because in the manner that moved in the way that it appears, and without any wings, a strange shape, but then at speed. So it's unconventional, and that stands out.
Is this the same one where somebody posted a video on YouTube of it? I saw it a couple of years ago, where a passenger filmed, I think it was like a triangle or a diamond-shaped object that was keeping speed with the plane. I don't know whether this is the same story or not, or whether you're aware of this video. But they're recording it for a good 3 minutes out of the little window that you get on your passenger planes, and it's keeping speed with the plane, and you never lose sight of it, even though it's hundreds and hundreds of feet lower than the plane.
I've seen that one. I'm not actually sure whether that one is the one that I'm referring to. I'm not actually sure, but I'll definitely have a look through our archives and maybe send Paul off and have a look. But we're like 25 minutes into the show already, so I might just extend the little show by another half hour, because we do want to hear from John Polk, and we have got some interesting updates on the Rendlesham Forest incident, guys. Rendlesham Forest, 1980s, not that long ago. You know, an American airbase, nonetheless, in a part of the UK that isn't too far away from where we are now. It was in Suffolk, 1980. You know, Army security patrolmen, again, pilots, police officers, security controlmen. A former police officer, Alan Godfrey, believes he was a victim of alien abduction when he was on night patrol in November 1980. The policeman, who's well respected, was suddenly startled by a brightly lit craft on the road in front of him. Now, he claimed it was the size of a bus. The UFO was 14 foot tall. It was rotating. It was hovering 5 feet above the ground. But when the freaked out police officer tried to radio for help, he claims that his device was completely dead. And the next thing he remembers, he was driving along the road again, 30 yards beyond the point where he stopped. This is a police officer, again, you know, making another report of why would you, I don't get it, for police officers, pilots, why would you put your job on the line and make these claims? I'm not sure, but we'll be back in a few moments' time, and we're going to bring Paul back, and then we're going to talk about the Rendlesham Forest incident, which is described as UK's Roswell. Okay, so stand by, because we'll be back after this.
This is NLPI Radio. You're listening to NLPI Radio.
This is NLPI Radio. You're listening to Mickey Gokul, Sherry Herbert and Paul Rook. We've also got, joining us tonight, is the Reverend John Polk, who's in the USA. He's a ufologist, ancient alien theorist. This guy knows what he's talking about, so we're going to get some answers tonight. He's also going to give us an update on that incident in December 1980, where members of the U.S. security patrols at an Air Force base in Suffolk, they went to investigate suspicious light in Rendlesham Forest. Jim Penniston, one of the witnesses, claimed he saw a strange craft in the woods. He estimated to be about 3 meters tall and about 3 meters wide at the base. He said, I walked right up to it. I noticed the fabric of the shell was more like a smooth, opaque black glass. The object then apparently vanished, but other staff at the base noticed some strange sights over the next few days as well. Now, it's been debunked as being the lighthouse that was nearby, but how can you touch a lighthouse that's a few miles away? It doesn't fit. You know, is the government trying to really cover up the fact that we are being visited by aliens for whatever reason? People are seeing them, and not just like average Joe blogs from down the road, but police officers, airline pilots, military personnel. if it was a member of parliament, then obviously I wouldn't believe a word they would say, because they just talk a load of crap. But these are legitimate people with jobs that are doing everyday work. So are they coming to see us? Have they come to see us? Well, in 1954, a lady from Staffordshire reports of seeing UFOs. She also reports seeing the aliens inside the UFO. We'll go to that after we heard from John, because I think the Rendlesham one is pretty important. The people that are involved in the Rendlesham incident were military personnel. There was tape recordings at the time, and initially it wasn't meant for public release. We were never meant to know, but you know how things go. These things come out, and before long, you get the information, and you start to listen to that, and it starts to become mainstream media. What is going on? Are the Americans have some sort of, I don't know, some Star Wars thing where they've got technology? Do the British government have access to flying objects and other things that they want to keep secret from us? If so, why? Well, I'm going to ask our guest tonight, and I'm going to welcome him on the show. He's the Reverend John Halt. He's an absolutely astounding gentleman, because the information that's contained in his brain is just unbelievable. So I want, without further ado, please welcome the Reverend John Polk. Sir, are you with us?
I am with you.
Thank you very much indeed. Listen, thank you for joining us tonight. We've got a lot to talk about, so I want to get your views and opinion on the famous incident at Rendlesham Forest, sir.
Well, first of all, there were so many credible military personnel and police officers involved that it's kind of hard to refute trained military personnel. One of the first questions that does arise: how can military personnel misinterpret a UFO for a lighthouse or a conventional aircraft? I would like to think that your military forces, our military forces that were in the UK at the time in 1980, both at Woodbridge and at Bentwaters, through a multi-task force kind of operation with our Air Force and your military in Suffolk, how these trained professionals could not tell the difference between a lighthouse, a plane, a helicopter, and an actual UFO. I think that's one of the first questions that we must address. And to me, the short answer and the easy answer is that they didn't misinterpret anything, that they weren't hallucinating. And there was also multiple groups of military and police officers that saw similar things, similar colors, similar lights in the sky at different times also. You mentioned earlier that police officer Alan Godfrey felt like he was abducted in November of 1980, but the Rendlesham incident that has been famous didn't actually happen until December 26th of 1980. So this has been going on for some time. And then, of course, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt, he saw something himself, and all the reports came to him. And at first, he didn't believe it until he saw it for himself, and then he realized that, yes, in fact, that this is real. And then Larry Warren and Sergeant Adrian Bustinza had a similar account on December 28th, 2 days after the famous incident that was eyewitnessed directly by John Burroughs and James Penniston of the American Air Force. So let me talk about what I don't see a whole lot of attention being drawn to regarding specifically John Burroughs and James Penniston and what they encountered. So when they saw the craft, and you explained what it looked like earlier, James Penniston saw what he would interpret as something similar to Egyptian hieroglyphics that were embossed and raised up off of the surface of the. And at first he was a little apprehensive, he was a little nervous, a little scared, and then he felt comfortable. He felt like there was some kind of energy inviting him to touch the craft, because at first they thought that they could get some kind of radiation poisoning or that, something bad could happen. but he was inclined to go touch the craft. And when he did, he received a download of binary code that was imprinted indelibly in his mind. And he held on to this binary code in his mind. He tried to forget about it. He tried to erase it from his own directory, if you will, in his brain, and he could not. So I think it was even perhaps a couple years removed that he went to a code-breaking computer savant who broke down all of this binary code and interpreted a message out of it. And also included in this message were coordinates. So let me start with the message. And I'm going to paraphrase because it's debatable exactly how the binary code spelt out, but it was something like continued investigation for planetary advance. What does that mean? That means that there's some kind of, Paul used the term experiment, which is true, but it's also a program that has been going on for thousands upon thousands of years. So interplanetary investigation for our planetary advance. And then the coordinates, curiously enough, actually pinpointed an island off of the coast, Ireland, off of the western coast of Ireland, which is debated if it ever existed or not. Ancient sailors, Norse sailors, Irish sailors, and merrimen who pioneered and conquered the seas of the northern Atlantic spoke of an island off of the coast of western Ireland called High Brazil. And High Brazil supposedly was an island that could be seen and never reached, although a few different sailors actually got to the island, and they reported that they saw beings on this island that resembled extraterrestrials with antennas coming out of their head, more similar to that of a giant hare or rabbit. And that part is something that is not really being talked about, is the binary code and the message that came out of the binary code and the coordinates of this island, High Brazil, that used to be on seafaring maps hundreds of years ago and is not on these maps anymore, which is curious in itself. So that was the part I wanted to talk about that's not really getting enough attention.
I do remember vaguely about the... Oh, I've got an echo there for some reason. Yeah, I do remember that in the binary code and the hieroglyphics, but they also came back with some kind of response saying that there was this was markings, manufacturer markings for stuff. It's just utter rubbish. When you listen to what people are coming back with as a response, they certainly haven't given it any thought, and they just assume that everybody involved is absolutely stupid and will buy any story. It's just unbelievable. We're all grown-ups. You know, we're all aware of something going on, whether it's the government testing new toys or you know, the Russians scaring the British, scaring the Americans, scaring the French. Who cares at the end of the day? We're grown up and we can accept that, you know, some government out there has got advanced technology. But is it down to the government? Is the government... Yeah, are they the ones that should be telling us that we're not responsible enough to know this information, or what do they think we're going to do? Do they think we're going to start looting and panicking and arming ourselves with weapons because there's another race of people that have technology? I don't know. They have technology better than us. So what? Does that make them hostile? I don't think so. But in my mind, I think that we're interesting to observe, because when you look at the planet itself, and, you know, all the species that live here, different animals, you know, what are we doing to this planet? Well, of course you'd want to observe any species that's destroying its environment and each other. You have to get an understanding of that. And I don't think we have an understanding of that. I don't think they have an understanding of that. And if they are coming, they're coming because they want to understand how we work. It's as simple as that. They're observing us. Every single year, worldwide, when the celebrations at New Year's Eve launch fireworks into the sky. It's often reported that there's a UFO somewhere. It could be a drone, quite possibly, but there's always a UFO footage somewhere, whether it's China, New York, England. There's always a UFO in the footage. Whenever a missile is launched, there's quite often a UFO nearby. In fact, I remember reading somewhere that UFOs were responsible for disabling nuclear weapons at one stage, actually proving that they had the capacity to do that. Whether they're, extraterrestrials, whether they're Russians or whatever, they have a capacity and a technology that is pretty amazing. And it's claimed that in exchange for technology, that is it the Gaia Treaty?
The Greada Treaty.
Greada, that's it.
Yeah, we talked about it last week, actually. But yes,
we did. There are claims that governments have made a pact with aliens to say that it was okay for them to remove, abduct, and test human individuals in exchange for information. I don't know if that's true or not, but people are claiming abductions. People are claiming to be beamed up into UFOs, especially not so much in the UK, but especially in America. But this police officer doesn't want to say he was abducted by aliens, but he's got no choice because he feels that is actually what happened. I understand he can't account for any of his time. This was in 1980. If you were abducted by something or you lost time when you was on a road and it was an incident where you couldn't understand, of course you'd remember. You'd remember for years to come. It would be embedded in your mind. It would be everything. Your life would change. So when you do see a UFO, it is a life-changing event. But again, so many people witness UFOs in the UK, but it's gone unreported because they're worried about their jobs and so on, just the same as it is all around the world. The two hikers in the Scottish Highlands in the 1990s, in the 1950s, a lady, a housewife, just a normal, everyday housewife in Stafford, was going about her business and she had an amazing experience. In fact, I've got that interview here now and I'm going to play that for you. It is interesting. Apologies for the sound quality on this one, guys. But when you listen to this lady, there's no reason why she would make that story up. But her description of what she sees is amazing. So this is about 5 minutes long. So listen close to this one because we are and we will be asking questions. Oh, it's also got a bit of a strange beginning. Okay, it's just a weird intro to this one. But this is a lady from Staffordshire, and this is her report. From what I understand, was taken from a local media news crew at the time. The incident took place in, I believe, 1954 in Stafford, in the UK. And this is her story. It would have been a story. It would have been a story. I'm just waiting for that to catch up. It doesn't seem to want to be doing it, so I'm going to hold on to that one. I'll play that one in a minute. Speaking of Rendlesham, I'm just going to go back. We have got an interview with one of the military personnel involved. You mentioned him earlier on. This is in addition to the information that's out there anyway, and it was an interview conducted by the BBC. So have a listen to this one. Equally, it's about 5 minutes long. And it gives you some interesting updates into that incident at Rendlesham, which is our Roswell, and it's significant. Listen to this, guys.
This is NLPI Radio. This is the Friday Night Paranormal Show with Mickey Gokul.
What did happen over the skies of Rendlesham in Suffolk, December 1980? Well, a new book entitled Haunted Skies by John Hanson and Dawn Holloway revisits the incident. It all began in 1983 when the News of the World ran this sensational headline. It was based on an official memo from this man, Deputy Base Commander Charles Halt. Mr. Halt, now retired, has returned to Woodbridge to give a talk on the latest revelations from that fateful night of 1980. Charles Halt told me he was a fan of Suffolk and had fond memories of his time here.
Oh, I've been back a few times. This is my favorite place.
Do you recognize? Is it all familiar to you?
Oh, my, yes. I've stayed in the Bull Hotel before. I've been around. The only disappointing thing is that the base is not maintained the way it used to be. And a lot of our new facilities were bulldozed and lost, so to speak. Poor political decision, but that's not my choice.
Have you managed to catch up with any old acquaintances in your time here?
Oh, yes. In fact, I spent yesterday with some. We went toward the base and did some things and talked about old times and reminisced a bit and had a drink in the pub.
How vivid are the memories of what took place 35 years ago?
Very good. In fact, what I did several months later, I sat down with a small recorder, cassette recorder, which was very popular in 1980, and recorded everything I could think of that happened, step by step through it. And recently I went back and listened to the tape, and I'll tell you what, I have a pretty good memory. It got burned deeply into my mind. I guess it was so significant. You know, there's things that happen you never forget. That's one of them.
What do you think you actually saw?
I think I saw something under intelligent control. Now, I never saw personally a mechanical ship or some clearly defined shape. What I saw were lights. I saw three different things. I saw a glowing red eye-like ball that was dripping like molten metal that came toward us, that moved. It came into the forest, moved through the trees, missing the trees, obviously under control. The item moved back into the field and exploded and was gone. There were three objects to the north in the sky that had multicolored lights that moved in synchronization as though they were doing a grid search. We watched them for quite a while, and we saw two objects to the south. They were white, bright lights. We couldn't discern a shape. There was a shape, but I couldn't tell what it was. One came overhead at high speed, very high speed, 2,000 or 3,000 feet up, and sent down a laser-like beam at our feet. Just click, it was on. I stood there in awe, very concerned. Is it a weapon? Is it a warning? Is it communication? And as suddenly as it appeared, it disappeared. The object then moved back to the south. The sister object to the south came over Bentwater's base and sent down similar beams in or near the weapons storage area. I can't say they went in. A lot of people didn't say much and kept their mouths shut for years till they retired. I've had a lot of statements now. I have confirmation from the air traffic control people, and I am going to read it a little later tonight. They saw the object go across their scope, 60-mile scope, in 2 or 3 seconds. Thousands of miles an hour. It came back across their scope again, stopped near the water tower, which wasn't far from them. They observed it. They watched it go over and go into the forest where we were. Rendlesham radar, Eastern radar we call it, definitely picked something up, and it was, how should I say, it disappeared, so to speak, the recording and all. But one of the operators has confirmed that they did pick up a bogey, they called it, and it went into the forest, or they lost it near Rendlesham Forest. Our controller in the weapons storage area, we have a big tower there, saw the object, and so did a command that was working there. 3 or 4 of the people on the ground in the weapons storage area went up and got a 12-power binoculars, and the objects in the sky, they say, were triangular. I could not see the shape because they were bright. They were just too bright to pick out a shape. Whatever was there was obviously under intelligent control. My personal feeling is there was some type of a mothership or bigger entity or something that was controlling what was on the ground and perhaps some of what we saw in the sky. I don't know. One of the people in the weapons storage area say he saw a much larger craft. None of them told me this at the time. I didn't find this out until years later, when they all retired. The air traffic controllers were asked, well, why didn't you confirm? Because I kept calling the command post, asking, look here, what do you see? And they kept saying they see nothing. And the air traffic controllers told me that they knew any time an air traffic controller reported a UFO, they got decertified. And they became a cook or a baker or a copper or some other such thing. So they said, hey, zip, we don't talk about it. I have signed sworn statements from them that they did what they saw.
Do you regret being part of the incident? Because
if I had to do it over again, I wouldn't have gone out. I would have sent a subordinate out. If you really want to know the truth. And I'm a little irritated because I wrote the memo because my boss and his boss didn't want their name on anything. but there was never any intent for that document to become public.
To this day, no one really knows what happened above the skies of Suffolk that night. The investigations and the theories continue.
This is NLPI Radio. You're listening to NLPI Radio.
Yep, this is NLPI Radio. You're listening to Mickey Gokul. Also, Sherry Herbert is co-hosting with me tonight, as well as Paul Rook. And we've got our guest, John Polk, the Reverend John Polk from the USA. He's live with us tonight, talking about the Rendlesham Forest incident. Tonight's show, UFO sightings in the UK. Have you seen a UFO in the UK? Have you experienced anything unusual in the skies? Do you know somebody that has? We want you to Skype in or even come and see us in the chat room. Let us know if you have any kind of incidents that involved UFOs. We want to know. Have you seen something strange lights? Let us know live, because we're here for another 40 minutes, guys. We've got the Reverend John Polk, who is a ufologist. He can answer some questions that we can't.'s an expert in his field. And we're going to go back to him right now. Sherry, you still there, hon?
I'm still here. I'm still listening.
Good
finding
stuff.
everything interesting.
As we said earlier, okay, look, we're just average people. We're not highly trained. We just go about our normal lives and everything is fine. And then all of a sudden something happens. You just witness something that isn't quite part of your normal daily routine. And then you want to talk about it. And then when you talk about it, people think, okay, I'll have a double.
Crazy.
Oh, yeah, that's the first thing. Now, I don't understand why people are automatically out there with that conception that UFOs, aliens, ghosts don't exist. And the people that talk about them are absolutely crazy. There are a lot of people that talk about them, and the people that talk about them are the people that have had experiences. This is not a sign of craziness. It's just normality. It's just people
just
like you.
What you see. It's
absolutely.
You're just telling what you've seen. You can't help that. You're not in control of what happens to you. And why should you live a lie? And why should you hide it and never talk about it?
Because the government do not believe that you should be doing that. In actual fact, I've got some info somewhere that in the US of A. Now maybe the Reverend John Polk will be able to correct me on this one, but there is a law that prevents you from interacting with an alien or any alien craft. Reverend, can you shine any light on that one? Or it's bizarre.
That's new on me. I don't know. But one thing I do know is in the state of Washington and the Pacific Northwest, in certain counties, it is illegal to interact with Bigfoot. I mean,
okay.
It is on the books. It is on the books. You can, it's a misdemeanor, and you can get heavily fined for doing so. So if you're going to do it, don't get caught,
Is that for their own protection or for Bigfoot's protection, do you think?
For the most part, Bigfoot tries to avoid human beings, so I would assume it's for our human protection. It's kind of like certain animals. If you corner them, they will attack you. So don't corner them. Leave them alone. For the most part, Bigfoot tries to avoid humans. And, usually when humans stumble upon them, it's by accident. They're often hunters or, a guy with his kid and the dog out in the woods going for a walk or, things like that. They usually just don't. Bigfoot doesn't come up to people's doors and knock on the door and be interactive. They try and hide. And if they're spotted, they try and run away. But to answer the question, I haven't heard that, but I would not rule it out.
Well, I've got it here. There was a law in the US. This is, bearing in mind, I'm reading off the internet, so whether it's true or not, I do not know. But maybe somebody can go and have a look. There was a law in the US under Title 14, Section 1211 of the Code of Federal Regulations, implemented on the 16th of July, 1969, which makes it illegal for US citizens to have any contact with extraterrestrials or their vehicles. Me and you, Sherry, are absolutely fine at doing that. We can go to America and we can touch them and we can talk to them because we're not US citizens. And yes, yes,
but I can't because I'm an American. That's not quite fair.
I would have words. I think I would have words, but that's bizarre because what does that tell you? If there is a law preventing.
Part of that kind of makes me wonder. The way that it's worded is if you have any contact with UFO, alien, anything like that, then it's illegal. It doesn't state if you purposefully have contact with aliens. So if an alien comes up to you and abducts you, is this a way of stopping people from talking about it because they're scared of getting arrested? Because it doesn't say that if an alien picks you up, that you're not liable. It seems to say that even if you're not accepting of what is happening and you don't want it to happen, you're still breaking the law. I wonder if that's another way of them trying to cover up alien activity.
Well, I posted that in the chat room, so if anyone wants to go and look that up and find out whether there's any legitimacy to that law, that would be interesting to find out. What does that tell you? If it's a law, they're basically saying that aliens exist and their vehicles exist.
You know, our military has what you call Psalm 101, which is the standard operations manual for what you do in case of coming in contact with an extraterrestrial and or extraterrestrial aircraft in a military context. So it's called Psalm 101. And inside Psalm 101, which stands for Standard Operations Manual, it will go through protocols of what to do in these case scenarios. You know, how to go about interacting with the vehicle, how to go about interacting with occupants in the vehicle. And there's different protocols. And one of the protocols that is outlined in this manual is to lie about absolutely everything, to contain the local law enforcement and basically shun them out of all of the investigation, to not let them do anything, but to make them set up a perimeter around the military that is actively working the scene. There was an individual named Clifford Stone who was commissioned by our U.S. Army. I believe he was a sergeant in the military. He failed his physical, but because he was an empath and a psychic medium, they used him to telepathically communicate with extraterrestrials that they were able to commandeer from these crash sites to be able to communicate with them. And it was called interfacing. And this is all outlined in what you call Psalm 101, which was on, you ever see MUFON's Hangar 1 files that they have on television here on the History Channel in the United States?
We also have that here in the UK on History 2 channel as well. So that's a really good a series of shows. That's pretty amazing, that show. So I'm in awe with some of the things that they're actually producing, and you know the evidence they're producing is just amazing. It's a great show, guys. So have a look at it. But yes, we're familiar with that one as well.
So one of the episodes talked about, it was actually called Psalm 101. I mean, the whole episode was an hour long. That's what it talked about. And more specifically, Clifford Stone, the interfacer, which is a pretty incredible story. He's been on a number of radio shows and television shows talking about this. Now that he's retired and he's not worried about losing his job and his career, he's very vocal about it and is proactive as much as he possibly can be. And good, we need more individuals like him. You know, I mean, even Lieutenant Colonel retired Charles Halt, he wasn't going to talk about any of this. You know, he is now. He's retired. He's even gone back to Suffolk and even back to Woodbridge just to reminisce. And a I'll tell you what, that 5-minute recording of his, that shed light on facets of that case and incident that I never knew existed before. So that was brilliant that you shared that with all the listeners tonight.
Well, I've been doing a little bit of research of my own, just for my own personal interest, because, you know, I've seen and heard and witnessed things myself that I can't explain, and I've had I've got a few flying hours under my belt, and, you know, I understand that a lot of our civil aviation requirements, capacities are limited to maybe 34,000, 35,000 feet for civilian aircraft. But then when you see aircraft flying at the edge of space, which is 90,000 feet, at incredible speeds and able to do maneuvers that you couldn't possibly do because of the lack of atmosphere, you have to ask questions, because we don't have that capacity or that technology, and it certainly isn't a meteorite or other earthbound object. So I always ask questions, and I have a look at Rendlesham because it's not too far away from where we are. We have friends in the area as well, so it's a place that we want to go to and you know, to have a look at. So I'm kind of doing a little bit of research just to find out whether it's worthy of our time. But I'm also wondering, you know, like with the USA has Area 51. It's interesting to note that in 2013, in fact in August 2013, the CIA finally acknowledged that Area 51 existed, even though everybody knew it existed before that. Yeah, I mean, it was like, yeah, okay, it's here, you know, like, yeah, we do have Men in Black, you know, yeah, we Area 51, yeah, it was called Dreamland, but, you know, blah, 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 it didn't exist. Oh, and it just appears, and and it's fine, you know, we all know about it, it's fine. Now, nothing to see here, carry on. It's that attitude. I'm kind of wondering, and I'm going to ask Paul about this, because maybe he might know, he might not, maybe he'll pose a question. Do we, as you know, as the United Kingdom, do we have an Area 51 equivalent, Paul?
Hello, yeah. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah, I can hear you well.
That's fantastic. I would say yes, simply because I do believe that if there are aliens in UFO craft, the British government do know about it, simply because they don't see a UFO as a threat to the UK, so they do not investigate any UFO reports whatsoever. So that indicates to me that they already know about it. So I would say there is some sort of government installation somewhere that has UFOs, got the technology, and playing about with it and creating new stuff for us to use. It just stands to reason. It's a just logical assumption, really.
And the best place to have this would be in a place that was quite remote, maybe
somewhere
mountainous,
secret.
Maybe somewhere that wasn't inhabited as much as the south, maybe somewhere in Scotland.
That's what I was
Possibly,
thinking as well.
But saying that, if you see weird objects in the sky, where are you least likely to see them?
In a town.
Exactly. So who's to say there isn't a secret installation underneath London? Because
there's all kinds of possibilities.
Yeah, you'd not notice the UFOs in the sky, you know. So again, it's just a theory. But also, I was thinking earlier on, actually, in the conversation, there are apparently lots of other different alien civilizations. Why do we assume these UFOs are coming to visit us? Could there not be a secret underground civilization under the earth, which would also give rise to the hollow earth theory that we've discussed on other paranormal shows?
Indeed.
And also, the Rendlesham Forest isn't too far away from. I don't know if you remember when we covered our first show. We talked about two children that was discovered in Wolf Pit, and their skin was green when they were found. Could they have been the alien civilization that was underground? So it's sort of all links links together in a weird sort of way.
It is all linked because if you take, for example, people from every location, every profession have reported UFOs. In fact, according to UFOevidence.org, 5 to 7% of the people in the world have seen UFOs, and 10 to 15% of people know someone who have had contact with a UFO. I mean, that's amazing figures. But one thing is absolutely paramount in my mind about this whole thing about UFOs. So far, no UFO has ever been tracked on radar entering Earth's atmosphere.
So, I mean, I've done a bit of research today, actually, and it just astounds me. You know, do UFOs exist or not? That's what I was looking at, trying to put together a theory for. And I noticed that there are video footages out there. There was some documented by the BBC on news reports with strange lights going on and flying around behind them. And they've said on the clip that the video footage and everything has been removed from the archives of the BBC. So it indicates a cover-up. But then you've also got stories above Brighton in the year 2000. 2 police officers in a helicopter were sent out to investigate strange reports of air traffic. When they got out to where this strange thing was, they tried to give chase to it, but it was just too fast for them and disappeared. For me, why would the authorities send 2 police officers, to investigate air traffic when really shouldn't it be a job for the RAF? Isn't that what they're for?
Well, that's an interesting point. I've always
it's almost like they're trying to cover it up by throwing in stories like that to throw you off the subject. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, if we got something in our airspace that we don't know what it is, surely a couple of F2s or F-15s or whatever they are, you know, go and intercept to find out what it is. Don't send a policeman in his police helicopter.
Well, that's interesting as well. You know, when we were talking about the pilot who couldn't identify what the object was that was coming towards them. Well, if an investigation was launched into that, surely air traffic control would know who has and who hasn't got permission to be flying in British airspace, and they would be able to log who that was. So if they've launched a investigation into it, they would have been able to find out who it was if it was legitimate and if it was just a plane or somebody that was meant to be there, surely.
But then if, say for example, at the current climate at the moment with the Russians and the Ukrainians going at it, for example, if the Russians wanted to attack us, they'd send a plane over. Our air control would go, yep, it's a Russian plane, intercept it, and off the RAF go.
Exactly.
But if you've got a blip there that says, I don't know what that is,
you send planes out to find out straight away, don't you?
Yeah, you send the RAF, off they go, and they go and intercept it, and they deal with it. Not 2 policemen.
In a helicopter. What can a helicopter do?
What are they going to do? Throw their asp at it?
Yeah, do a GTA and, you know, get a rocket launcher out and miss.
Absolutely. Nuke it out of the sky. But, no, I just, it doesn't make sense. Why send 2 police officers to look at something like that rather than... Because it is attack on our airspace at the end of the day.
There's an answer to that, and I have the answer to that.
Okay.
Because the UK government are a whole heap of fanny-eating idiots. Seriously. You know,
but then also...
This is up... If I was to take... Let's say, for example, me and Paul going out on a Friday night and a white transit van, registration number ABC1234, pulls up beside us and 2 masked men jump out, grab Paul, put him in the back of the van and drive off with him. That's an abduction. I go to the police station and I say to them, my friend has been abducted. Okay, what was he abducted by or with or who? There were 2 masked men. I never saw their faces. They had a white transit van, registration number A123 ABC, whatever. And it went off this way at speed. They would launch an investigation. They would try and find my friend, that van, and use all their resources available to track it down. Now, let's say, for example, me and Paul are going for a walk on a country lane and a UFO appears above our heads. It's 45 foot in width. It's orange. It has blue lights underneath. It has a sign saying aliens inside. You know, it's obvious that it's an aircraft that we do not own. All we have, it's obvious it's a UFO, and then a beam of light comes up and sucks Paul up into the arse of this machine, and off it goes. And I go to the police station.
It's got to be a big beam of light, to be fair.
It has to be a big beam of light. But I go to my local police station and I say to them, my friend's been abducted, but he's been abducted vertically into an aircraft of some sort that had Alpha Centauri written on it or whatever, and it was orange. And I'd give them the same description. There was 2 individuals. They had balaclavas on, or what I thought, and they had big eyes. And they would look at me and think, mate, I'd have a double whatever you've been smoking.
Yeah.
And that'll be it. That'll be it.
Yep.
Now, come on. There is something really missing here, because an individual has been taken, whether they've been taken by human beings or whatever, someone's been taken. There should be an investigation regardless of what it is. But we're all treated like, well, okay, you know, look, 2,000 Americans a month disappear from the USA. God knows how many people disappear from the UK. And what are our governments doing about it? They're doing absolutely fuck all. Seriously. And it is an issue, because if I've got children, everybody's got children or loved ones, and if something that is from outer space or from inner Earth is a potential threat to my family, I'm expecting the government I've elected to do something about that and at least go and have a fucking look at it.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I'm talking about?
No.
Excuse my, but that's just the bare minimum. That is what our Air Force is there for. That is why we have an army.
Is why I think they already know about it.
Because they don't bother to look into it.
They had Operation Blue Book.
Yeah,
where
Blue
they
Book.
would look at cases of UFO sightings and abductions, and it all went into this Blue Book. Now, they decided that UFOs were not a threat to national security, so they decided to stop all investigations. Why did they stop? People like police officers, army personnel, air pilots, all were reporting these things. So why have they stopped? It just doesn't make sense unless they actually know about it. Unless they absolutely, without question of a doubt, are either in communication with or have some sort of extra deal that we don't know in addition to the abduction for technology deal. You're right. They are in our airspace and they're not being investigated, which is okay. I understand the theory. You know, look, they're not being treated as hostile. Now, for you and me, if somebody comes into my back garden, to me that's hostile intent. Yes.
You don't walk into somebody's back garden and say, well, I was only there because I wanted to refurbish his lawn. That's just not the case. You can't just make that assumption. So there's too many assumptions being made, and it does upset me to the point that, you know, there is 30,000 or so UFO sightings every month, I believe, in the USA. There's like 300, 400 in 2015 in the UK. Officially, reports that were taken by MUFON, the Mutual UFO Reporting Agency or Society Network. Sorry, it is going on. There is evidence. You know, they ask us for evidence of ghosts as paranormal investigators, and we can't prove it, or we have difficulty. But here we go. Look at Facebook and type in UFO. What do you see? You see UFOs. Some are fake, yeah. Some are computer-generated images. You know, some are drones that are mistaken. Some are even airplanes. Airplanes coming into land with the 3 lights, one on each wheel, one on the four, the wheel at the front, and the 2 on the wings. And from a distance, they do look like a triangular shape, and people have photographed them and filmed them and not had an understanding what they are and thought they were UFOs. But there are some genuine ones out there, some that cannot be explained in our airspace. Some of them are even, landing, abducting people, and we're not doing anything about it. That's the bottom line. We're not doing anything about it at all.
Another famous case, in particular in America, the Phoenix Lights incident. Now, I don't know whether this is a story connected to it or whatever, but I was informed by someone that there was a similar sighting over Iraq during the Iraq War with the Americans and everyone else, and the American servicemen opened fire on whatever ship that was, and it was almost like the Phoenix Lights incident was in retaliation to that fight, because apparently like a few F-12s or whatever, F-15s were shot down and by this UFO that appeared over Arizona. Maybe that's why they've got that law.
It could well be. Let's go back to our guest, the Reverend John Polk. You've heard what we've been saying, quite passionate about the fact that our airspace is not being protected, even though they say they are. They're not sending out our troops to go and investigate or intercept. Would you agree that the government are working hand in hand with aliens? Do you think aliens are among us? Hence why there is no hostile threat?
Yes. Let's take a few steps backwards. The decommissioning of Project Blue Book was actually disinformation. People were starting to figure out that there was a Project Blue Book to investigate UFOs. Well, the big disinformation act was there is no threat by UFOs if there are even UFOs in the first place. Therefore, we're just scrapping Project Blue Book. But what they did, they never scrapped the operation. They just took it internally. They took it away from the Air Force, and it went higher up into our Black Ops government because there was so much to it. It was starting to leak and starting to go public. The same thing happened to Nick Pope in the UK. He talked about it on television at length, very passionately, how, he was a member of the Department of Defense from 1985 to 2006. And when he first started, he didn't believe in UFOs at all. It only took him like within a couple years before he totally believed in it, because there was so much physical evidence. And when they scrapped that project where you live in 2006, he said the height of UFO activity and witnesses was at an all-time high. So why would they scrap it then? The reality is because more disinformation. It was the government's attempt to make it look like there was nothing going on. So just get rid of the whole organization, and the reason it was too public. People were starting to know about it. It was actually starting to be talked about on television. So they got rid of it, although they never got rid of it. They just acted like they got rid of it. Something else that we had discussed earlier in the night are a lot of these aircraft that we see, are they actually our own military experimenting with alien technology? I believe very, very little, and I tell you why. One of the stories we talked about tonight is there was a UFO parked somewhere in the sky, stationary for 10 minutes. Now, if UFOs that are made by our government are doing this, why would they be overt? Why would they make themselves visible? Would they not try to be as clandestine and invisible as humanly possible? Why would they make themselves visible? Why would they stay stationary in the sky where witnesses could witness them? That makes no sense if it's our own government doing these kind of projects. They would try to be as sneaky and covert and black ops about it as totally possible, because they don't want anybody to know what they're doing. They don't want us to know what technology they're experimenting with. Why? Because a lot of it is based on free energy concepts. and will, completely eliminate the oil barons, which the oil barons absolutely do not want. And actually, they are the ones that are in control of our governments. Our governments have very little control. So a lot of all this is very much disinformation. Now, going back to the Phoenix Lights, even the former governor of Arizona, after the fact, came clean and just said, yes, it was absolutely real. I saw it. Hundreds of thousands of people saw this over the valley in the desert Southwest, in the Phoenix and Mesa, Arizona area. It actually went from one corner of the state to the other and went up and through the Rocky Mountains. So it wasn't even just seen in the desert Southwest, just in Phoenix. Also, Paul just mentioned the same thing happened in the Middle East. That exact same triangular object that was massive in size was actually seen over Russia and different parts of the world at different times. Is it the same craft, or is it multiple crafts that look the same? We have actually fashioned our own craft that is identical in dimensions to it, and it's called the TR-3B. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the TR-3B. Now, they do experiment with the TR-3B. It can go Mach 20, which is incredibly fast. But guess what? It's still not using the alien technology that it's capable of. They can actually travel faster than the speed of light, which will actually employ time travel, and the ticks of your clock will speed up or slow down depending on how fast that you go. And I assert, and I've asserted all along, that we actually have time travelers in our covert black ops space program, along with these breakaway civilizations, and that they have been experimenting with time travel going back to when Hitler was doing it with D Glock back in the late 1930s and the early 1940s, when Werner von Braun, who came over to America in Operation Paperclip, and Hermann Oberth, who were working directly for Hitler and the ISS and the Ahnenerbe Society, they came out and admitted that they had contact with extraterrestrials, and that extraterrestrials were not teaching them how to retro-engineer these crafts. They were actually teaching them how to build these space-time vehicles. So this has been going on for such a long time. None of this technology is new. 1947 was the Roswell case, but in Branson, Missouri in 1941 in the United States, they commandeered a UFO craft with ETs on board and took it to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Nevada. In 1942, in the San Bernardino Valley in California, they found another crashed craft and took it to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio in the United States. And then in 1947, they did the same thing with Roswell. And that's when they started to institute Psalm 101, the Standard Operations Manual, which actually depicted 24 different species, and they actually drew artist renderings of what these ETs look like, and they documented 24 different species back in the 1950s that they had already come in contact with, all in the Psalm 101 publication. Actually, not a publication, a manual for our covert black ops military and government. So all of this, I'm getting all excited. I'm starting to sweat because this stuff I'm so passionate about, and almost everything that we hear, there is some form of disinformation going on because they really don't want us to know the truth.
But the truth is out there. To quote the line from a TV show, the truth is out there. And there's one thing that you cannot take away from an individual, and that's their experience. No matter what you do, you cannot take that away. And I've had occasion through my through North London Paranormal Investigations, I regularly take UFO reports in the area. And, sometimes they're planets and aircraft, and, we tracked an aircraft just using a simple app called Radar 24, which is a flight tracking information service. You get a visual map and you can see where the airplane's going, where it's been, its flight path. Especially interesting when the president came, of the USA. He was here landing just 25 miles away from where I am at the moment. And it was interesting to see all the aircraft. But, could you track those aircraft? No, because they're military aircraft and we're not allowed to do that. But when you do track aircraft, and you get a witness saying that I saw this air thing in the sky over London, flying erratically, so and so. Okay, you think, all right, well, let me take a note and I'll go and have a look. And you go and have a look, and you use flight radar, and you track the aircraft that's actually making unusual manoeuvres at 2,000 feet above London town, because it, as with any town, you have to have twin engines. You can't fly a single engine craft over a town, and you find that, oh look, there's a twin engine aircraft here. Let's see who owns this aircraft. Let's see the flight pattern that it's demonstrating to the radar, and you can see it's an unusual pattern. But when you look at the information, you can see that the aircraft belongs to an equipment calibration service, an aviation equipment calibration service. So obviously they're doing a job of work, they're measuring, and that kind of thing is often mistaken for UFOs, which is accepted, and you write back to the person and say, nothing to worry about, it was just an aeroplane. Great, brilliant, they're happy with that. But the problem is there are times, like myself, I've seen things that I don't understand, and I don't really want to understand, because then it's going to make me think completely differently the way I think at the moment. But there are times when I feel that we are all grown up. We're very mature as individuals. Maybe not as a race, but as individuals, if government, came to us tomorrow and said, okay, we have been visited by aliens over the last 25, 30 years, 40 years. They're a very, very friendly bunch. They're not here to cause any harm, but they're here to educate. They're here to teach, or they're here for this purpose or that purpose. Do you think that there's going to be mass panic and we're going to run around looting and pillaging and blowing things up and arming us? I don't think so. I just think we'd embrace it. Well, I'd like to think we would, but then forget about the governments and their agenda and like warring factions of the world. Forget about them for a minute. Let's talk about normal people. We'd embrace that, and I think it would be nice to know that there's a race out there that is happy enough to take us under their wing and to nurture us and to educate. But then I can now see the government's point of view. If you've got somebody that's got, bigger weapons than you, better technology than you, then ultimately it makes them redundant. With the technology that you talk about, energy for free, it makes the bigwigs, the people that are in control, it makes them redundant. So I can understand why there's disinformation, totally. But I don't care. You still operate your business, still sell your fuel, but just let us know. That's all we want. What do you think, Sherry, now that you're a little bit more informed?
I definitely think that the government cover things up. I mean, I don't, like I say, I'm not an expert in UFOs, but I do a lot of reading, and I do speak to a lot of people, and I have done over the years. And one of the things that keeps coming up, no matter where I am, whether I'm talking to somebody that I know, whether I'm talking to people that I've worked with in the past, like face-to-face, or whether I'm talking to people online on forums, on like top secret government forums and stuff like this, the one thing that keeps coming up is the Men in Black idea, and the people that if you say too much, or if you put a video out that they don't want you to see, that people are getting phone calls, people are getting knocks on the door from people basically threatening them to tell them, you stop talking about this now, you take this video offline, if you don't, there'll be consequences. And that comes up, I can't tell you how many people I've spoken to who don't know each other, where that theme seems to be something that comes up quite a lot. So with that in mind, 100% think that the government do not want us to know. I 100% believe in aliens and UFOs and visitors from other worlds, but that we're not allowed to talk about it. And I don't think that will ever change.
Interesting. Well, Paul Rooks,
yep.
we've got to continue this subject, this topic at another day. And I think I've got to say thank you to you. I've got to say thank you to Sherry. And I've got to absolutely thank our Reverend John Polk for joining us tonight. He's been an absolute star in education. So, sir, thank you very much for joining us tonight. I understand that you've got another show later on. Is that right?
I have two. I'm a co-host on one, and I'm just going to call into another one that is affiliated with. Anyway, long story, but yes, I have two shows after this one. So,
well, hopefully we'll bring you back. But in the meantime, we've got like 30 seconds left. So I'm going to say, guys, enjoy your long bank holiday weekend in the UK. John, you enjoy whatever it is you're doing, sir. It's been an absolute pleasure. Sherry, you have a great time UFO spotting this weekend. And Paul Rook, I will see you soon, certainly next week, for NLPR Radio and its series of shows that we've got all through the week. So stay tuned, guys. I've got to say, watch the skies. You know, just watch the skies, ladies and gents. Keep an eye out there and talk to people and see what's happening. But in the meantime, sleep tight. Don't have nightmares. We'll see you again next week. Good night and God bless.
People of these fair isles, listen up. From this day forward, you don't need cash. Not for your morning cuppa or takeaway supper. Not for that lunchtime bap or new baseball cap. It's time to break free. To stand up and say, yes, I am cash free and I am proud.
8 chocolate eclairs, £8.80, please, love.
Right, sorry.
Discover an easier way to pay with Visa Contactless. Simply touch and pay for anything up to £30 at over 400,000 places across the UK.
Visa Contactless. It's the only change you need.